Welcome to another Jacket upcycling tutorial. In this tutorial we'll show you how to elongate the sleeves and the bottom of a jacket so you can wear it for at least another season or two before passing it on to a younger sibling or selling it. Firstly, we measure the width of the sleeve. Make sure to stretch the fabric. According to my estimation, the sleeve is about 10 centimeters wide. Next, we do the same for the bottom of the jacket. Again, remember to stretch the jacket so you get an accurate reading of the width. So now let's prepare the scrap fabric that we have for the extension. So first I have a seam allowance of about half a centimeter to 7 millimeters. Then two sets of 10 centimeter stretches of fabric, one for each width of the sleeve, so front and back, and on the other end there is a second seam allowance of about half a centimeter to 7 millimeters. Since there are two sleeves, we cut two identical stretches of fabric for this. These pieces are symmetrical, so as far as pattern cutting goes, this should be really easy. I've also marked two widths, which will fold in half to create the sleeve, and you also have the two seam allowances on the wide end. So using the same principles, we also create a similar detail for the bottom of the jacket. And as you can see here, I have marked certain points of the scrap fabric, so I know that it is matching up with the seams that are there on the original garment. So first we just use a straight stitch to stitch together the sides of the sleeve details that we're going to be adding on. For extra ease during stitching, I've fastened the two sides of the fabric together using clothing pins. Then we repeat the procedure with the second sleeve. So here we finish sewing along the short edge, and I've ironed the seams so it's as thin as possible when we come to do the next steps of the procedure. So now we match up the sleeve detail to the existing seam, making sure they are basically right on top of each other. And now we're going to use clothing pins to secure the sleeve detail to the original garment, bearing in mind that there is an elastic band in the original garment. I've added some temporary stitching to the sleeve detail just to make the sewing process easier. So now we're sewing along the edge of the sleeve where the sleeve meets the original garment, turning and pulling the sleeve as needed so we can go around in a circle along the circumference. For this step, we switched the color of the thread in the sewing machine to a color that matches the original jacket, so in this case red. And we have done a straight stitch along the circumference of the original jacket, about 1 millimeter away from the black detailing, making sure that we are bending the seam allowance towards the red part of the jacket. This helps the new detailing look neat. Next, we turn the sleeve upside down and fold the additional black detailing in half so we can make a nice looking sleeve. And now I'm just using black thread to sew along the circumference of the new detail. Sewing along as shown reduces the visibility of the thread on this side of the garment. If you have a sewing machine that can deal with this thickness of fabric, you can also do it neatly on a sewing machine, but here I'm doing it by hand. So now we can turn the garment back to its right side, and the cuff is almost ready. As you can see here, now we just need to sew along this seam. So we attach the two sides of the cuff together, and this would help preserve its shape. So it doesn't do this. The sleeves are ready, and now we can move on to the bottom of the jacket. Now let's move on to the bottom of the jacket. Here I have attached the piece of fabric to the bottom of the jacket using temporary stitching, stretching the fabric as I went, and this lines up with the seam at the back. To do this, I stretch the fabric throughout the process of stitching them together, as shown here. On the side of the garment, I made sure that I've left space for the seam allowance as shown. So now we're just using a straight stitch and stretching the garment as we sew along the line of the temporary stitching that we did earlier. Towards the end, be careful to make sure you don't damage the zipper mechanism. So now we have finished stitching it to the jacket, and you can remove the temporary stitches that we added earlier. And now we're going to sew along this line, making sure to fold the seam allowances towards the extra section that we're adding to the bottom of the jacket. So after turning the new detail to the right side, so not inside out, I have this corner of the garment finished here, and now I'm going to show you how to close up all of the other seams so everything is ready. So here I've done a straight stitch on the added part of the fabric, just about 1 millimeter from the seam, and this also helps us attach everything together, as you can see here on the other side. So now this side of the garment is fine, and we need to deal with the inside of the garment. And I have used temporary stitching to hold the folds of the bottom together as shown here. And now we will use hand stitching to put everything together, just like we did with the sleeves. So now everything is sewn together on this end and on the other end, and as you can see, the zipper is also fine. And now all that is left is just ironing along the length of the added piece, and then removing the temporary stitching. And here is the final finished garment. We hope you found this tutorial helpful. Stay tuned for more tutorials from Unico in the coming weeks. Thank you.